Colonel Kyung checked his environmental suit one last time as the boarding pod prepared to launch from the Inshan Vengeance. Around him, 43 Marines made final preparations for what every military manual would classify as a suicide mission, boarding and fighting inside a living enemy starship, remember. He told his team over the communication system, "Everything inside that bioship is designed to kill us. The air is toxic, the walls probably secrete acid, and we'll be fighting in an environment that changes as we move through it. So basically, like home," replied Sergeant Soyeon, earning nervous laughter from the other Marines. Colonel Kyung smiled grimly. She wasn't entirely wrong. The briefing materials from the Villani had painted a picture of the bioship's interiors that reminded him uncomfortably of some of Earth's more hostile environments. Acidic atmospheres like Venus, extreme temperatures like the deep ocean vents, shifting terrain like an active volcano. The difference was that humans had learned to survive in all of those places. "Launch in 30 seconds, came the voice of the pod pilot. Through the small viewport, Kyung could see their target, a massive Korthak bioship that had been damaged by nuclear fire, but was already beginning to regenerate. Admiral Daeho's plan was audacious even by human standards. Board the enemy ship, fight through its organic corridors to reach the central nervous system, and destroy it from the inside. 10 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, launch. The boarding pod shot away from the human cruiser like a bullet, its armored hull designed to punch through enemy defenses and deliver its cargo directly into the heart of enemy territory. Around them, space lit up with plasma fire as other pods from the fleet made similar runs at different bioships. Impact came with bone-jarring force. The pod's drill nose bored through the bioship's organic hull, spraying alien fluids in all directions. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as the Marines prepared to enter an environment no human had ever seen before. "Atmosphere analysis complete," reported Corporal Wu Jin, the team's engineer. "The air is 20% sulfur dioxide, 40% methane, and the rest is compounds that don't exist in our periodic table. Also, the temperature is 60 degrees Celsius and rising." "Lovely," muttered Kyung. "At least it's not as bad as that." Training exercise in the Australian outback. The pod doors blew open with explosive charges, and the Marines poured into the bioship's interior. What they found was like stepping into a nightmare designed by a mad scientist. The corridors were alive, their walls pulsing with organic rhythms. Veins of glowing fluid ran along the ceiling, and the floor felt spongy under their boots. More disturbing were the sounds. The bioship groaned and whispered around them, as if it was aware of their presence and was trying to decide how to kill them. "Movement ahead," called out Private Jiho from point position. 3 contacts, moving fast." The Korthak defenders came around the corner like living weapons. They moved on 6 legs, their carapaces gleaming with biomechanical enhancements. Acid dripped from their claws, and their compound eyes focused on the humans with predatory intelligence. The Marines opened fire with weapons specifically designed for close-quarters combat in hostile environments. Instead of energy weapons that might be absorbed or redirected, they used solid projectiles with explosive tips. The Korthak, expecting the precise, minimal casualty tactics of other galactic species, were completely unprepared for the human approach to indoor warfare. The first Korthak took a burst of explosive rounds to its center mass and simply came apart in a spray of organic fluids. The second tried to spray acid at the humans, only to discover that their environmental suits were designed to handle much worse. Earth's military had learned long ago to prepare for chemical warfare. The third Korthak managed to close with the Marines, its claws raking across Private Minho's armor. But human combat doctrine included extensive hand-to-hand training. Minho rolled with the attack, drew his combat knife, and drove it between the creature's armored segments in a move that would have been familiar to any human soldier from the last 1,000 years. "Corridor secure," Colonel Kyung reported, moving toward primary objective. As they advanced deeper into the bioship, the environment became increasingly hostile. The temperature rose to levels that would cook most alien species. The air became so toxic that it would dissolve Villani lungs in minutes. Acid began seeping from the walls in an obvious attempt by the ship's biological systems to kill the intruders, but the humans kept moving. "This is actually kinda nice," commented Sergeant Soyeon as they passed through a section where the temperature had reached 90 degrees Celsius. Reminds me of that sauna back in Seoul? Corporal Wu Jin was busy adapting their equipment to the alien environment. When acid began eating through their standard cutting tools, he improvised replacements using Korthak biotechnology and human engineering principles. When the ship's organic systems tried to seal passages behind them, he created explosive charges from marine rations and medical supplies. "How did you know that would work?" asked Private Jiho, watching Wu Jin's latest improvisation blow a hole through a particularly stubborn biobarrier. "Basic chemistry," Wu Jin replied with a shrug. "Plus, my grandmother used to make fireworks for New Year celebrations. Same principles, different scale. The Korthak threw everything they had at the advancing humans. Acid sprays that could melt starship hulls, temperature extremes that ranged from freezing to molten, gravity fields that would crush most species, toxic gases that were lethal to almost all known life forms. The humans dealt with each challenge the same way their species had always dealt with hostile environments. They adapted, improvised, and kept moving forward. When the ship's gravity systems tried to crush them, they used magnetic clamps and moved like mountain climbers. When acid filled the corridors, they switched to rebreathers and protective gear. When the temperature dropped to Antarctic levels, they activated heating systems and kept fighting. "Colonel, I'm reading massive bioelectrical activity ahead," reported Wu Jin, studying his modified sensors. "I think we've found the brain." The central nervous system of the bioship was like nothing in human experience. It filled a chamber the size of a cathedral, a massive organic computer made of living tissue and biomechanical components. Electrical patterns raced through neural pathways thick as tree trunks, coordinating the ship's functions with alien intelligence. But it was also beautiful in its own terrible way. The neural networks pulsed with patterns of light that resembled aurora, and the whole chamber hummed with the rhythm of a vast, artificial heart. "Almost seems a shame to blow it up," murmured Sergeant Soyan. "Almost," agreed Colonel Kyung, as he placed the fusion charges that would destroy the bioship's central intelligence. But they started this war. As the Marines worked to plant their explosives, the bioship fought back with increasing desperation. The walls began secreting new toxins, combinations of chemicals that had never been seen before. The temperature swung wildly from one extreme to another. Gravity fields twisted and warped, trying to tear the humans apart. But humans had evolved on a world where the environment was always trying to kill them. They had developed not just physical resistance to hostile conditions, but mental resilience to keep functioning when everything went wrong. When Private Jiho's environmental suit was breached by acid, he sealed the leak with emergency putty and kept working. When Corporal Wu Jin was knocked unconscious by a gravity pulse, Sergeant Soyan dragged him to safety while continuing to provide covering fire. When the bioship's immune system began attacking them with specialized hunter organisms, the Marines fought them off with improvised weapons and pure determination. "Charges set," Colonel Kyung finally reported. 30 seconds to detonation. Time to go. The escape was a running battle through corridors that were actively trying to trap them. The bioship, realizing its fate, sealed passages and redirected its defenses to stop the humans from escaping. But the Marines had planned for this. They had memorized multiple exit routes, prepared backup equipment, and trained for situations where everything went wrong. As their extraction pod shot away from the dying bioship, Colonel Kyung looked back at the massive organic vessel. It was still beautiful even as it died, but it had chosen to make itself humanity's enemy. And humans had learned long ago that survival sometimes required destroying beautiful things. The bioship's destruction sent shockwaves through the Korthak fleet. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered a species that not only survived in hostile environments, but thrived in them. The psychological impact was devastating to creatures that had always relied on environmental advantages to defeat their enemies. Aboard the Incheon Vengeance, Admiral Daiho watched as similar boarding actions played out across the battlefield. Human Marines were fighting inside a dozen bioships, adapting to alien environments that should have killed them in minutes. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Mina, "we're receiving communications from the other boarding teams. All report successful penetration of enemy vessels." Elder Sunho, watching from his position on the bridge, felt something he hadn't experienced in months: hope. The humans weren't just fighting the Korthak. The Korthak response came faster than anyone expected. Within 6 hours of the human fleet's arrival, bioships began emerging from the space around every planet in the system. Not dozens, hundreds. The organic vessels moved with purpose, converging on the human position like immune cells attacking an infection. Admiral Deho watched the tactical display with growing concern. The enemy ships were massive, some the size of cities, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. They moved in perfect formation as if controlled by a single mind. "Sir, we're being scanned," reported Lieutenant Mina from her sensor station. "The scans are invasive. It's like they're trying to read our minds. Can they?" "I don't think so, sir. Human brains seem to be naturally shielded against their technology. But they're learning. Each scan is more sophisticated than the last." From his position at the tactical station, Fleet Commander Shungmin studied the approaching enemy force. As the fleet's chief strategist, he had spent years analyzing alien combat doctrine from the few examples in Earth's databases. What he saw here was unlike anything he had studied. "They're not following standard engagement patterns," he reported. "No scouts, no probing attacks. They're coming straight at us with everything they have." Numbers. 437 bioships of various sizes. The largest ones are reading as 7 kilometers long. Captain Jiwon's voice crackled over the communication channel from Seoul's Pride. "Admiral, my ship is ready for combat. Orders?" Admiral Deho looked at the display one more time. The human fleet was outnumbered 2-1, facing an enemy that could regenerate damage and adapt to new threats. By any reasonable military doctrine, they should retreat and call for reinforcements. But Earth was 300 light-years away, and the Villani didn't have time for reasonable military doctrine. "All ships, this is Admiral Deho. We didn't come all this way to run from a fight. Battle Formation Alpha, show them what Deathworlders can do." The human fleet moved into attack formation with a precision that surprised even the Korthak. Ships that had trained together for years flowed into perfect defensive positions, creating overlapping fields of fire while maintaining maximum maneuverability. The first engagement began at extreme range. Korthak bioships opened fire with streams of corrosive plasma that could eat through most known materials. The plasma bolts moved in beautiful, deadly arcs across space, seeking their targets with guided intelligence. Human ships responded with railgun fire, simple kinetic weapons that accelerated metal slugs to significant fractions of light speed. To the Korthak, accustomed to energy weapons and exotic technologies, the human approach seemed primitive, until the first railgun round punched completely through a bioship's organic hull. "Direct hit on Target 7, reported Shungmin, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. "The organic armor doesn't seem to stop kinetic weapons." More hits followed. Human gunners trained on targeting systems developed for Earth's chaotic battlefields found their mark again and again. Korthak bioships designed to absorb and adapt to energy weapons had no defense against chunks of metal moving at relativistic speeds. But the Korthak learned quickly. "Sir, they're changing formation," Mina called out. "The damaged ships are moving to the rear while fresh ones take their place." Admiral Deho watched as the Korthak fleet reorganized itself with fluid efficiency. The wounded bioships were already beginning to regenerate, their organic hulls healing around the impact sites. Worse, the new ships at the front had developed thicker armor plating where the railgun rounds had been most effective. "They're adapting to our weapons," Sungmin observed grimly. "Each hit is less effective than the last." "Then we'll have to get creative," Admiral Deho replied. "Captain Jiwon, are you ready to try something stupid?" "Always, sir. Take your destroyer squadron and make a run at their largest ship. Draw their fire while the rest of the fleet repositions. With respect, sir, that's suicide. Not if you do it right." Captain Jiwon's squadron broke from the main fleet and accelerated toward the largest Korthak bioship. The enemy response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of plasma streams converged on the small human ships, turning space into a deadly light show. But the human destroyers didn't fly in straight lines. They rolled, dove, and twisted through space in patterns that looked random but were actually carefully calculated. Each ship followed a different trajectory, making it impossible for the Korthak to predict their movements. "How are they doing that?" came a voice from one of the Villani observers aboard the flagship. Elder Sunho had insisted on watching the battle despite the risks. "Training," Admiral Deho replied simply. "Every human pilot learns to fly in Earth's atmosphere first. Hurricane-force winds, lightning storms, temperature inversions. After that, space combat seems almost peaceful. Soul's Pride danced between plasma bolts, its hull heating up from near misses but never taking a direct hit. Captain G1 pushed her ship harder than any Villani would dare, using gravitational assists from nearby asteroids to change direction in ways that defied Korthak targeting predictions. While the destroyers drew enemy fire, the rest of the human fleet moved into position. Admiral Deho's plan was simple. If the Korthak could adapt to human weapons, then humans would have to adapt faster. All ships switched to nuclear warheads. Let's see how they like that. Nuclear missiles streaked across space, their warheads designed not for the clean battlefields of civilized warfare, but for the dirty, desperate conflicts that had shaped human military thinking. The first explosions caught the Korthak completely off guard. The nuclear fireballs didn't just damage the bioships, they irradiated them. The organic components that allowed the ships to regenerate began dying, their biological functions disrupted by radiation that would be merely inconvenient to most technology, but was lethal to living tissue. Direct hits on multiple targets, Shungman reported. The bioships are having trouble healing radiation damage, but even as they spoke, the Korthak were adapting again. The bioships began developing radiation-resistant shells, their organic hulls evolving in real time to counter the nuclear threat. They're learning from every attack, Admiral Deho muttered. We need to hit them with something they can't adapt to. That's when Captain G1 did something that would become legend in both human and alien military histories. Her destroyer, pursued by 3 bioships and running low on ammunition, suddenly reversed course and accelerated directly toward the largest Korthak vessel. G1, what are you doing? Admiral Deho called over the communication channel. Something stupid, sir. Just like you ordered. Soul's Pride screamed through space on a collision course with the 7-kilometer bioship. The Korthak vessel, recognizing the threat, opened fire with everything it had. Plasma bolts tore into the destroyer's hull, but Captain G1 kept coming. At the last possible moment, she triggered her ship's self-destruct sequence. The explosion was visible across the entire system. Soul's Pride's fusion reactor, overloaded and detonated at close range, tore a massive hole in the bioship's organic hull. But more importantly, the sacrifice had given Admiral Deho an idea. All ships, new target priorities. Forget the hulls, aim for the bright spots. Those bioluminescent patterns aren't just decoration, they're nervous systems. The human fleet adjusted its targeting, focusing on the glowing neural networks that ran along the bioships' hulls. Railgun rounds and missile strikes began hitting the organic equivalent of brain tissue, causing the alien vessels to spasm and lose coordination. Within minutes, 3 bioships had gone dark, their biological components severed from their mechanical systems. The Korthak, for the first time since the battle began, seemed confused, but the victory was temporary. Even as the damaged ships drifted helplessly, new bioships were emerging from the planet's surface. These were different, sleeker, more heavily armored, with neural networks protected deep inside their hulls. They're building ships specifically designed to fight us, Seungmin observed. Vessels optimized to counter human tactics. Admiral Deho studied the new enemy formations. The Korthak were learning, adapting, evolving their strategy with each engagement. But there was something they hadn't accounted for, the same thing that made humans successful on their death world. Humans were even better at adapting than their enemies. Signal the fleet, he ordered. Time to show them what desperate people can accomplish. All ships prepare for close combat operations. We're going inside those bioships. Elder Sunho, watching from the bridge of the Inshan Vengeance, felt his crystalline form shiver with fear and admiration. The humans weren't just fighting the Korthak. They were learning from them, matching their adaptation with creativity, born from surviving on a world that constantly tried to kill them. The real battle was just beginning. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and Admiral Deho immediately understood why the Villani had sounded so desperate. Through the main view screen of the Inshan Vengeance, he could see what had once been a beautiful world. Now 60% of the planet's surface was covered in a writhing mass of metal and flesh, the Korthak. Biofactories, Jesus Christ, whispered Captain G1 over the communication channel from Soul's Pride. What the hell are those things? The biofactories looked like massive tumors growing across the planet's surface. Metallic tendrils reached up from the ground like grasping fingers, while streams of processed matter flowed between different sections. It was grotesque and efficient, a perversion of both technology and biology. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy readings from the planet's surface," reported Lieutenant Mina from her position at the sensor station. "Whatever those things are, they're converting matter at an incredible rate." "And the Villani?" "Underground, sir. I'm reading life signs in subterranean cavities. Looks like they built cities beneath the surface." Admiral Deho studied the tactical display. Hundreds of Korthak ships moved around the planet like antibodies protecting an infection. They were unlike any ships in human databases. Organic curves mixed with mechanical precision, as if someone had tried to build a spaceship out of living tissue and metal. "Open a channel to the planet's surface," he ordered. "Let's see if any of our new friends are still alive down there." The response came immediately, as if the Villani had been waiting by their communications equipment for 300 years instead of 3 months. The voice that emerged from the speakers was the same one from the original distress call, though now it carried a note of desperate hope. "Unknown vessels, this is Hana of the Villani Federation. Please identify yourselves." "This is Admiral Deho of the Terran Defense Fleet," Deho replied, his voice steady and professional. "We received your distress call. We're here to help." The silence that followed lasted so long that Deho wondered if the connection had been lost. When Hana's voice returned, it was shaking with emotion. You actually came. The Deathworlders came." Ambassador Nari, who had insisted on joining the fleet despite the dangers, stepped forward. As Earth's chief diplomat, she had spent the journey learning everything possible about Villani culture and language. "We need to establish a meeting. Can you provide us with safe coordinates?" Yes, of course. But you should know. The Korthak will detect any ship that enters the atmosphere. They'll attack immediately. Let them try." Captain Jiwon's voice cut across the channel. "We didn't come all this way to hide in space." 2 hours later, Ambassador Nari's shuttle descended through the planet's atmosphere, escorted by a squadron of human fighters. The Korthak response was immediate and violent. Bioships rose from the surface like angry wasps, their organic weapons firing streams of acidic plasma at the human craft. The escort fighters moved with a precision that surprised even Admiral Deho. Commander Jiho, leading the squadron, seemed to dance between the Korthak weapons, his fighters rolling and diving in patterns that looked chaotic, but were devastatingly effective. Within minutes, 6 Korthak bioships had been destroyed, their organic hulls torn apart by human railgun fire. "Interesting," Admiral Deho murmured, watching the tactical display. "They're fast, but they fight in predictable patterns." The shuttle touched down in an underground landing bay carved from living crystal. Ambassador Nari stepped out to find herself surrounded by the most beautiful and fragile beings she had ever seen. The Villani looked like living artwork, tall, slender creatures with translucent skin that glowed with soft internal light. Their movements were graceful, almost musical. But what struck Nari immediately was their fear. Not fear of the Korthak, fear of her. Elder Sunho approached slowly, his crystalline form trembling. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled, as if he was trying very hard not to run away. "Ambassador Nari, welcome to what remains of our world. We are grateful for your arrival." "The pleasure is ours," Nari replied, trying to project calm confidence. "We're here to help in any way we can." Sunho gestured to a meeting chamber carved from the same living crystal as the rest of the underground city. As they walked, Nari became aware of other Villani watching from doorways and corridors. Their glowing eyes followed her movements with a mixture of hope and terror. "Elder Sunho," Nari said carefully, "may I ask why your people seem afraid of me? We're here as friends." Sunho paused at the entrance to the meeting chamber. His glow flickered with what Nari was beginning to recognize as embarrassment. "Ambassador, you must understand. In our galaxy, Earth is legendary. We have records of your world dating back thousands of years. Your planet is classified as uninhabitable by galactic standards." "Uninhabitable? But people live there." "Yes," Sunho said quietly. "That's what makes it legendary." Inside the meeting chamber, Sunho activated a holographic display showing galactic classifications. Earth appeared as a small blue dot surrounded by red warning symbols. "Your world experiences temperature variations that would kill most galactic species," Sunho explained. "Your weather patterns include hurricanes with wind speeds that could tear apart our buildings. Your oceans contain creatures larger than our starships. Your very atmosphere is toxic to most life forms. Nari stared at the display. This is how the galaxy sees Earth? A Class 12 death world. The highest danger rating we have. Most species wouldn't survive on your planet for an hour without protective equipment. But we evolved there. It's just home. Exactly. Sunho's glow brightened slightly. You evolved to survive conditions that would exterminate entire civilizations. Your species has survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and global wars. You've turned a planet that should be uninhabitable into a thriving world with billions of inhabitants. The pieces began falling into place for Nari. That's why you called us. The Villani are a peaceful people, Ambassador. We evolved on garden worlds where the greatest danger was an occasional mild storm. Our technology is advanced, but we've never needed to become fighters. When the Korthak arrived, Sunho's voice trailed off. Tell me about them. The holographic display changed, showing images that made Nari's stomach turn. The Korthak were creatures of nightmare, part insect, part machine, all hunger. They moved in perfect coordination like parts of a single malevolent organism. They appeared 3 months ago, Sunho continued. They don't communicate. They don't negotiate. They simply consume. They've destroyed 17 civilizations that we know of, converting entire worlds into factories that produce more of themselves. How many are there? We don't know. They might be infinite. Each world they consume makes them stronger, gives them more resources to build more bioships, more harvesters. Nari studied the tactical data. The Korthak were efficient, ruthless, and completely alien, but they were also predictable. They followed patterns, moved in formations that suggested hive mind coordination. Elder Sunho, how many Villani are left? On this world, maybe 1 million in the underground cities. Across the entire Federation, we might be the last. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. An entire civilization, reduced to 1 million survivors hiding underground while monsters ate their world. What can you tell us about Korthak technology? Their ships are partially alive. They can regenerate damage, adapt to new threats. Their weapons are bioplasma, highly corrosive. They seem to have no individual will. They act as one mind controlling countless bodies. Nari nodded, already thinking about how to relay this information to Admiral Deho. The Korthak sounded formidable, but they also sounded like they had never faced an enemy like humanity. Elder Sunho, we're going to save your people, but I need you to understand something. Humans fight differently than other species. We're going to do things that might seem violent or chaotic to you. Ambassador, you are creatures from a death world. We expect you to be dangerous. We're counting on it. As Ambassador Nari prepared to return to the fleet, she reflected on the strange turn of events. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't, and the universe saw them as terrifying predators from an impossible world. Maybe it was time to live up to that reputation. The crystal cities of Valoria Prime burned under an alien sky. Hana pressed her delicate, translucent hands against the observation deck window, watching as another section of her homeworld disappeared into the hungry machines below. The Korthak bioharvesters moved like massive insects across the landscape, their metal teeth grinding through everything, buildings, forests, even the sacred crystal gardens where her people had meditated for thousands of years. How much time do we have? Asked Elder Sunho, his crystalline form shimmering with fear. The old Villani's normally bright blue glow had dimmed to a weak flicker, matching the dying hope in his voice. Hana checked her readings again, hoping the numbers had changed. They hadn't. 6 days, maybe 7, before they reach the underground cities. Our shields won't hold much longer. The Korthak had appeared 3 months ago, arriving in ships that looked more like living creatures than machines. They didn't speak. They didn't negotiate. They simply began eating everything in sight, converting matter into more of themselves. First, the outer colonies fell silent, then the mining worlds. Now they were here, on Valoria Prime, the heart of the Villani Federation. What about the other worlds? Sunho asked, though they both knew the answer. Kepler 442b went dark yesterday. The Tau Ceti colonies stopped transmitting 2 days ago. Hana's voice cracked. We're the last ones left. The Villani had always been a peaceful people. Their technology was advanced, their society perfect. They had solved hunger, disease, and war centuries ago, but they had never faced anything like the Korthak. Their weapons were designed for precision, not destruction. Their ships were built for exploration, not battle. Against an enemy that consumed entire worlds, they were helpless. Sunho moved to another console, his movement slow and tired. The distress signals? Sent to every known civilization in the galaxy. No response. Hana pulled up the communication logs. Dozens of messages sent, all met with silence. The Andromedans won't risk their fleet. The Centauri Republic is too far away. Everyone else is either dead or hiding. A new alarm sounded. On the main screen, another bioharvester emerged from the ground, its metal limbs reaching toward the sky like a hungry beast. The Korthak machines were getting bigger, more efficient. Soon they would dig deep enough to reach the underground cities where the last million Villani survivors huddled in fear. Hana stared at the ancient database on her screen. She had been going through old records for days looking for something, anything that might help. Most of the galaxy's civilizations were peaceful like the Villani. They had never needed to become fighters. But there were rumors, old stories about worlds so dangerous that only the strongest creatures could survive there. Deathworlds, she whispered, reading the old text. Planets where the environment itself tries to kill you. Sunho looked up from his console. What did you say? There are worlds out there where life has to fight just to exist. The creatures that evolve on these planets become different, stronger, more dangerous. Hana scrolled through the database, her excitement growing. Look at this. The screen showed a blue and green planet, beautiful but marked with warning symbols. Class 12 Death World, she read aloud. Extreme weather patterns, massive predators, toxic plant life, volcanic activity, ocean storms that could destroy starships. And yet what? Life still thrives there. Not just any life, intelligent life. They call themselves humans. Hana pulled up what little information existed. They've survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters that would wipe out entire civilizations. They've even fought wars against each other and somehow grew stronger from it. Sunho moved closer to the screen. This is madness, Hana. Even if these creatures exist, why would they help us? They sound more dangerous than the Korthak. Because they're alive, Hana said simply. The Korthak consume everything. If they finish with us, they'll keep moving through the galaxy until they reach every world, including this Earth. Maybe these humans are violent, but at least they're not trying to eat the entire universe. Another section of the city collapsed on the screen. Time was running out. Send them a message, Sunho said quietly. Elder, if we're going to die anyway, we might as well try everything. Send a message to these Deathworlders. Tell them what's happening here. Hana's fingers moved across her console, crafting a signal unlike any the Villani had ever sent. No formal diplomatic language. No complex negotiations. Just the truth, spoken with the desperation of a dying people. Unknown inhabitants of the world called Earth. She began, her voice steady despite her fear. My name is Hana of the Villani Federation. We are dying. Our children are being harvested. Our worlds are being consumed by creatures that turn everything they touch into more of themselves. She paused, watching another harvester break through the surface. We have heard stories about your world, about how dangerous it is, about how strong you had to become to survive there. We know you don't know us. We know you have no reason to care about our fate. But if any of you can hear this message, if any of you have the power to help, we offer everything we have. The signal was complete. Hana looked at Sunho, who nodded slowly. Send it, he said. Send it with everything we have left. Hana activated the transmission array, pushing every bit of power they could spare into the signal. The message raced across space, carrying the hopes of a dying civilization toward a small blue world where creatures had learned to fight the impossible and win. In the depths of space, the signal traveled through the dark, a tiny spark of hope crossing the vast emptiness between stars. Behind it, the Korthak harvesters continued their work, unaware that their newest victims had just called for help from the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. The Villani waited in their underground cities, counting the hours until their shields failed. They didn't know if their message would reach Earth. They didn't know if humans would care about the fate of strangers. They only knew that they had tried everything else, and now their last hope rested with creatures from a world so deadly that most of the galaxy considered it uninhabitable. Above them, the harvesters dug deeper, and the countdown to extinction continued. Admiral Deho was drinking his morning coffee when the universe changed forever. The communication alert came through at 0347 hours, jolting him awake in his quarters aboard the orbital defense station Terra Prime. At first, he thought it was another drill. The Terra Defense Fleet ran constant exercises, preparing for threats that might never come. But this wasn't a drill. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," came the voice of Lieutenant Mina from the communications bay. Her usual calm was gone, replaced by something Deho had never heard before, wonder mixed with fear. Deho pulled on his uniform and made his way through the station's corridors. Terra Prime was humanity's crown jewel, a massive orbital fortress that protected Earth from any threat the cosmos might throw at them. In his 30 years of service, those threats had always been theoretical. Asteroids, maybe. Solar flares. Nothing like this. The communications bay was buzzing with activity. Officers crowded around screens showing waveforms and data streams. At the center of it all stood Dr. Mina, Earth's leading expert in language and communication. Her eyes were wide as she turned to face the Admiral. "Sir, we've received a transmission. From space, from aliens." The words hung in the air like a physical thing. Deho felt his world shift. After centuries of searching, listening, hoping, first contact had finally happened. And it wasn't at all what anyone had expected. "Play it," he said quietly. The speakers crackled to life. The voice that emerged was clearly not human, too musical, too fragile, but the words were unmistakably English. As the message played, Deho felt his coffee grow cold in his hands. A dying civilization, children being harvested, worlds consumed by something called the Korthak. When the message ended, the room was silent except for the hum of electronics. "How long ago did we receive this?" Deho asked. 17 minutes ago, sir. The signal is incredibly powerful. It would have taken massive energy to broadcast this across the galaxy. "And you're certain it's real?" Mina nodded, pulling up analysis screens. "The linguistic patterns are too complex to fake. The emotional stress markers in the voice are genuine. Sir, these people are terrified, and they're asking us for help." Within an hour, every high-ranking officer in the Terra Defense Fleet was gathered in the main briefing room. General Taewon, head of military strategy, studied the tactical displays showing what little they knew about the threat. Captain Jiwan of the dreadnought Soul's Pride paced near the windows, her hands clenched into fists. The mood was tense, divided. "We don't know anything about these aliens," General Taewon argued, his voice measured and careful. "This could be a trap. An invasion force using a distress call to lower our defenses." "What invasion force?" Captain Jiwan shot back. "They're asking for help, not demanding surrender. And if these Korthak things are real, if they really do consume entire worlds, then Earth is next on their menu whether we help or not." Admiral Deho studied the star charts. The Villani Federation was 300 light-years away. A long journey, even with humanity's best ships. "Dr. Mina, what can you tell us about these Villani?" "From what I can determine from their language patterns and the few details in the message, they're a peaceful species. Probably herbivorous based on their communication style. They seem to have advanced technology but no military experience." Mina paused, looking uncomfortable. "There's something else, sir. In their database fragments that came with the message, they refer to Earth as a Class 12 death world." "A what?" "Apparently, in galactic classification, Earth is considered one of the most dangerous planets in known space. Most alien life couldn't survive here for more than a few hours." The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Captain Jiwan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They think Earth is dangerous. Have they seen what we've done to each other over the centuries? Maybe that's exactly why they called us," Admiral Deho said slowly. "They need fighters, and we're the only ones they know of." The debate continued for hours. Arguments flew back and forth about resources, risks, and responsibilities. Some officers worried about leaving Earth defenseless. Others pointed out that humanity had always dreamed of taking their place among the stars, and this might be their only chance finally. President Hyunwoo arrived via secure transmission from Earth. The leader of the United Earth government listened to the briefings in silence, his face growing more serious with each detail. "Admiral," he said when the reports were finished, "what's your recommendation?" Deho had been thinking about this moment his entire career, the decision that would define humanity's future among the stars. "Sir, I recommend we respond with everything we have. If these Korthak are real, they won't stop with the Villani. And if we can save an entire civilization, isn't that what we've always said we'd do? Help those who need it?" The risks are enormous, Deho admitted. We'll be taking our entire deep space fleet to fight an unknown enemy 300 light-years from home. We could lose everything. President Hyunwoo was quiet for a long moment. We've always wondered if we were alone in the universe. Now we know we're not. And somewhere out there, someone needs our help. He looked directly at the camera. Authorize Operation Starfall. Send everything we have. The next 72 hours were a blur of activity. Earth's shipyards, orbital facilities, and military bases came alive as humanity prepared for its first interstellar war. Ships that had been on patrol were recalled. Reserves were activated. Supplies were loaded. The fleet that assembled was unlike anything humanity had ever built. At its heart was the Incheon Vengeance, Admiral Daeho's flagship, a massive dreadnought designed to survive anything the universe could throw at it. Around it gathered cruisers, destroyers, carriers, and support ships. More than 200 vessels in total, carrying the hopes and fears of an entire species. Captain Jiwon stood on the bridge of Seoul's Pride, watching the fleet form up through the viewports. Think they'll be expecting us? She asked her first officer. The Korthak? Probably not. From what we can tell, most alien species are peaceful. They won't be ready for humans. Good, Jiwon said grimly. Let's show them what Deathworlders can do. Admiral Daeho made his final preparations aboard the Incheon Vengeance. The navigation computers had plotted the route to Villani space. The fusion drives were charged and ready. In a few hours they would begin humanity's longest journey. 300 light-years to help people they had never met fight an enemy they didn't understand. As Earth fell away behind them, Admiral Daeho thought about the message that had started it all. A desperate plea from a dying civilization, broadcast into the void in the hope that someone, somewhere, would care enough to help. The universe was about to learn that humans always answered when someone called for help, and they usually brought friends,